Hello BookTube, welcome to Lizzie Faye Loves Books. I'm Elizabeth, and today I have a kind of a wrap-up video for you, and it doesn't really have anything to do with March Mystery Madness, although it will include some of the mystery books that I've been reading in March. So I've mentioned earlier that these last couple of months I've been participating in a challenge that was sponsored and hosted by my local library. They have in the past, maybe the last 2 or 3 summers, I guess just really the last 2 summers, they have done a summer adult library program. Now historically they've always done a children's program in the summer, but they decided to do an adult program, and I have actually participated and won a really big prize in the last 2 summers. So this time they decided to not wait till summer. They did a winter program, and part of the thinking behind that is that here in Central Florida we have a much higher population during the winter because of the snowbirds, which are what we call the people who live up north in the summer and then they come to Florida to escape the harsh winter and have a milder winter here. So they are library patrons. A lot of them have, you know, I mean, if they have a Florida address, then of course they can be a library patron and check out books while they're here, just like anyone else can. And so I think they did have a pretty good response. Now, I decided that I would fill my whole bingo card. You didn't have to fill the whole card. You could just do, you've got 1 entry, you got a maximum of 6 entries. You could get a maximum of 5 bingos, and then if you fill your card, you got an extra entry. So I filled my card, I read a book for all 24, and then I was able to get 6 entries into the contest. And what they were offering was 2 Kindles and one $50 gift card for a local restaurant. And so I ended up winning the gift card. Now, I won a Kindle 2 years ago, and then last year I won the $50 gift card, but it was for Books A Million. So this year's a restaurant gift card, so my husband and I will be able to go out and have a date night, which will be a lot of fun. I was kind of hoping I could maybe get him a Kindle because he doesn't have a Kindle. He's got an older Nook that's even older than mine, but oh well, there's always next time. So I wanted to tell you about the books that I read for each challenge. Now, all of these are books that I've been reading over the past few months. The contest started on January 10th and it ended on March 15th. So if you've been following my channel, then you've seen me talk about these books, you've seen me read them, and if you are new to my channel, then I will try to go back and, well, at least try to mention when I read them, and then you can go back and find those videos. And if you don't have time to look for them and you want to know a little bit more about what I thought about any particular book, then just mention it in the comments and I will give you a link to the video where I talked about it, or I'll just tell you a little bit about it. So anyway, I love comments. So please, please do comment if you've read any of these. If you haven't read them and want to, if you read them and hated them, then that's fine too. I actually did not enjoy every single book that I read. One of them for sure I went into knowing I probably wasn't going to enjoy it, but it met the challenge, so I did it. Okay, so let me quit rambling, and I'm going to go through the list. I'm going to go down from top to bottom, left to right, and tell you about each challenge. All right, the first challenge was to read a book with more than 400 pages. I actually read at least 2, maybe more. And the book I'm counting for this is not the biggest book I read, but the biggest book I read, I could count it for several of the challenges, and so I ended up putting it in a different slot. So the one that I'm counting is by Jan Karon, To Be Where You Are. I believe this is book 14 in the whole Mitford / Father Tim series. It's my favorite series of all time, and I actually bought this book with my Books A Million gift card that I won from the last summer's program. So it all kind of goes together. Anyway, so that was awesome. And it had, let's see how many pages. It didn't have a lot over 400. 447, looks like. Yeah, 447. Okay, then a book set in another world. And now, let me just say, and I don't know, I didn't really ask this question to the librarians because I didn't really want them to have to think about it and give me an answer. It is the adult program. Now, they had a teen program and they had a kids program, I believe. or at least they had a kids program. I didn't ask them if it was okay if I read middle grade books or not, because I read a lot of middle grade books. Some of them are just as long as adult books, and some of the middle grade books I read are longer than some of the adult books I read. And I read a total of 37 books in the time period, and I only needed 24 of them to fill my card. So I did plenty of reading, and so I didn't even go there. I didn't even ask them if it was okay, because, you know, when you ask, then they have an opportunity to tell you no. And so, anyway, I read, just so happens that I read The Girl Who Drank the Moon in early March. Mainly I read it because it's one of the Sunshine State books, and also I read Newbery winners, but it happened to be the group read for middle grade March, which is going on right now, in addition to March Mystery Madness. So I thought it was fantastic. This is to meet the challenge to read a book set in another world. And this was a fantasy world, kind of a fairy tale world where magic happened, and it was great. So then the next challenge was to read a book with a female heroine. And I think I read a few. I read quite a few, but when we first got this challenge, I went through and tried to plug in the books. I looked at everything I'd read from January 10th to, you know, to the point that, because I don't think I got this right on January 10th. I got it somewhere around the end of January. So I looked back at my Goodreads and I thought, okay, I can count anything that I've already read from January 10th on. So this was a Christmas book that I read in January, A Very Dairy Christmas by Sylvia Hysen, and the main character, Callie, was, she was a little spoiled at first, but she did become a pretty good hero or heroine in this story, and she did a lot of good things for a lot of people. So I'm counting that for a book with the female heroine. Okay, so then the next one I read very recently, it is to read a book written by a celebrity, and thank you to a couple of you who gave me this suggestion, because I ended up really enjoying this book by Eilieen Davidson. She's a star of Young and the Restless. This is Death in Daytime, the first in the soap opera mystery series, and it was a lot of fun. A little saucier than a lot of cozy mysteries, a little more bad language, but not in a huge way. Definitely, I've read a lot worse, and so it was pretty mild. Okay. Then this one I had to change. It's to read a book with a color in the title. And I said I was going to read Gunpowder Green by Laura Childs. I'm actually reading that right now, but I knew that at that point that where I was trying to finish up, I knew I couldn't get two print books read at the same time, and this one was just going a lot quicker. So I'm actually currently reading Gunpowder Green, but I looked back at some of the audiobooks that I had, and I had just finished A Study in Scarlet by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, and so Scarlet is certainly a color, and I decided to count this for that challenge as instead of Gunpowder Green. Then starting now with the next column down, another Sherlock Holmes mystery. I read The Sign of Four because that challenge was to read a book written in the 19th century. So I wasn't really planning on reading another Sherlock Holmes. Originally, this was going to be my book set in or written in the 19th century, but when I needed it for Scarlet, then I went ahead and listened to this on audio, and I didn't really get it completely. I may need to listen to it again or read it, but I did complete it. Actually, I listened to it about 1.5 times just so I could kind of go back and try to understand exactly what happened, because I was going through it kind of fast. Then the next one is to read it. Okay, this challenge says read a book written the year you were born. I need to mention to the librarians that if they ever use that challenge again, they really ought to word that to say published the year you were born, because you have no way of knowing when a book was written. You just have to go based on when it was published. So that's what I did. And I read Harriet the Spy by Louise Fitzhugh. It was published in 1964, which is when I was born. And then the next one is read a book based on a myth. Well, I've read lots of Rick Riordan books, but I didn't have time to read one of those at this point. So I decided to go with a Disney myth, which this book featured villains, Disney villains, and they had come to life. So I think that counts. This is Disney at Dawn, Kingdom Keepers Book 2 by Ridley Pearson, and I counted this for read a book based on a myth. Then the next one I talked about not too long ago. Let's stacks are going here. The next one was to read a crime or mystery novel. Well, that's not hard because that's all I'm reading this month. But coincidentally, interestingly, I picked a book that I read in February, which is The Hour of the Hunter by J.A. Jance. This is definitely crime fiction. I have spoken about it already before, and so I won't talk much about it. In fact, I think I mentioned it in the March Mystery Madness book tag because it definitely has a psychopathic, did I say that right? Psychopathic criminal in that story. All right, then read a book that became a movie. Now, I haven't seen this movie yet, but I read Still Life by Louise Penny, and I believe the movie is something called Three Pines. Maybe it's just called Three Pines or Mystery at Three Pines, something like that. And I think it's a made-for-TV movie, but I need to look that up. I don't know even if it's on DVD or if I have to just try to find it on cable or maybe it's online somewhere. I don't know, but I did see that there is a movie of Still Life. Then, starting the next row. Now, the next one has the free space, so there's only 4 books in this row. Read a book by a female author, and I have several books by a female author, but I counted the Lending a Paw by Lori Cass, the first book in the Bookmobile Cat mystery series. I actually read this in February as well. This was Courtney, the Protagonist. This was their book club pick for February, and I was able to pick it up on audio, and I enjoyed that. All right, and then speaking of cats, the next one is to read a biography or memoir. I read this in early February. A buddy read it with Amber from Amber Eats Books. It is Kitty Cornered by Bob Tart, and that was a lot of fun. All right, so this was the longest book I read, but let me just justify this now. I counted this for read a book that scares you. Well, I don't really read scary books. I was going to count Stranger World by Jack Castle because this is a little bit scary, especially the prologue. There's some kind of horror elements in the beginning, but I had to kind of put that on hold because of the mysteries that I was reading. And, you know, I was reading middle grade books in February and then mysteries right now, and I just haven't been able to finish it. So I went back and I was thinking, you know, when I decided to pick up Lonesome Dove, I was a little scared of the length. And I was a little scared that I wasn't going to like it. So I know it's a stretch, but this is what I counted for that. Because had it not been for the read-along hosted by Ange and Elena, I probably wouldn't have picked it up at this point because it's intimidating. And I ended up thoroughly enjoying it. And I'm so glad that I read it. And I'm really looking forward to reading the sequels. Now, the next one is to read a book set in the future. This is the one I went into really kind of knowing that I probably wasn't going to like it. I did enjoy it a little more than what I thought I would. It wasn't horrible. It's just more graphic than my taste, and it is Naked in Death by J.D. Robb. I was able to figure out the mystery, although she did kind of twist it around there towards the end. It made me think maybe I wasn't right, but it turned out I was right, and that's okay. I kind of like being able to figure it out. Although if it's so obvious that you think, isn't everybody getting this? Come on, aren't you getting this? Like one I just read a couple of days ago. Then that kind of takes the fun out of it if you're just kind of like, okay, marking time for everybody else to catch up to where you are when you've already figured it out. But this was interesting. It's just more graphic than what I enjoy all that much. But I did read a book set in the future, and it's a mystery. Then the next one is to read a book with a one-word title. Now, this one has a subtitle, but basically the main title is one word, and it's Mess by Barry Yorgrau. This is a memoir of a man who is cleaning up his house. He's a hoarder, and so I counted that for the one-word title. Then the next one I changed in midstream. It was to read a book that was recommended by the Librarians, and because it's stated the Librarians, I took that kind of literally to mean that it needed to be recommended by one of the librarians at my local library, because originally I was going to pick a book that was recommended by the Bookmobile librarian, but he's from a different library still in my county, but not the library that's hosting this challenge. So I ended up moving that book to another challenge, and I decided to pick up Defending Jacob by William Landay. This is also one of my March Mystery Madness challenges for new, because this book is a new book to me. I just picked it up in a recent haul. And this was one of our early book club picks when we first started our library book club. And it wasn't available on audio for me at the time. And so I just couldn't get it read. It's pretty big, you know, for a print book for me. And it's over 400 pages. And books that are, you know, more than 300 pages really work better for me to be on audio. So I hadn't ever gotten around to reading it, but I had mentioned it one time not that long ago to the librarian that facilitates our book club. And she's like, oh, you haven't read that? Yeah, that's so good. It's really good. You need to read that. And so I'm counting that then for this challenge to read a book recommended by the librarians. Okay, then the next one you might say is a stretch, but really I think it's completely legitimate, and that is to read a book. Where's my stack? Oh, here we go. Read a book with a number in the title. And so my stacks are swarming here. So I chose The Nerdy Dozen by Jeff Miller. This was one of our Sunshine State books, and dozen is most definitely a word. It means 12, of course, and what else does it mean if it's not referencing a number? So I think that's completely legitimate. And then reread a book you loved. Well, I wouldn't say I loved this book, but I really did enjoy it, and it is a reread. I reread a couple of books that kind of fall into that category, so this is the one that I chose, Kingdom Keepers, Disney After Dark by Ridley Pearson. Then a book set in a different continent, and I actually had a couple of those too, and so what I chose was an Agatha Christie, The Mysterious Affair at Styles. I read this because Louise, the big-haired bookworm, picked this for her very casual Agatha Christie book club. This was the first pick. It was for February. I didn't read it till March, but I'm counting that for this challenge. Then read a book of short stories. All right, so this book contains 2 short stories. And I should have read this in December, but I didn't get to it until mid-January. Actually, yeah. I think I didn't even finish it until February. It's Love Finds You Under the Mistletoe by Irene Brand and Anita Higman. So anyway, I did read the whole book in the time frame of the challenge, and it's 2 short stories. It doesn't say how, the challenge doesn't say it has to be a lot of short stories. It just says a book of short stories. So I think this counts. Then 4 more. An award-winning book. Well, I could have counted the... there's several of these. I could have counted Lonesome Dove, but since I did reread A Wrinkle in Time, and it's a Newbery winner by Madeleine L'Engle, I decided to count this for that challenge. And then a book that has been banned. So I wasn't sure if I had anything that had been banned, but then I realized that the book club book for February was on a list somewhere of a book that had been banned. It's Their Eyes Were Watching God by Zora Neale Hurston, and so I was able to count this for that challenge. And then read a book of nonfiction. This is the one that I was going to count as recommended by the librarian because it was recommended by the Bookmobile librarian, but I ended up just counting it for my nonfiction book, Hallelujah Anyway by Anne Lamott. And this was really interesting and very uplifting. The last one, read a book based on a true story, and I read Alex and Eliza by Melissa De La Cruz. It's based, of course, on Alexander Hamilton and his wife Eliza Schuyler. And so that is what I read. And this is a book club book for sometime this summer. I just wanted to read ahead. I also read it for the Romance Readers Readathon that was hosted by Sissy and Sarah back in February. Okay, so those are what I read. I don't have them in a box or anything. I can't pick up 24 books all in one stack. So that's what I read for the library book club, the library bingo challenge for the winter. And they said that for the summer, they're looking at doing something. They found a list of like 100 books like recommended reading, and so they might do something related to those, like if you read X number from that list, then you get an entry, and if you read more, you get another entry. I don't know. I've got a pretty packed TBR for the next 3 years because of my 20 by 20 challenge, so I may not do that one. I might encourage my husband to do it, though. It's about time he did another library challenge. He participated the first year and didn't win anything, so he's a big reader, and if I can twist his arm a little bit, maybe I'll get him to to participate. So anyway, that's what I read for this challenge. I will do my best later on tonight to come back and maybe type all these in the description below so that you can kind of scan through and see. I know it's helpful. Even if I watch a video, it's still kind of helpful to see the titles written. Maybe if it's, you know, if I said it too fast and you had a hard time understanding what I said or anything like that, I know it's helpful to have things typed out. I was just thinking about another video a few weeks ago that I said I was going to type out the books, and I don't think I ever did. I need to go back and find that and make sure I do that. So anyway, that is my goal, to do that. It won't get done immediately, but I hope to have that for you very soon. So that's it. I've got several other videos coming up, some that are related to March Mystery Madness and a couple that are not. And that's all for this video. I hope you are having a great day. Read a good book, and God bless you.